I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Let me start this episode by asking you a question. If you stripped away your job title, your professional role, your business card, or your LinkedIn banner, who's left? I imagine that question will initially cause you a little bit of discomfort, perhaps even a little bit of confusion, and that's okay. In my experience of working with high-performing senior leaders all around the world, there is an outside perspective that they're flying, but often a real vulnerability because their sense of self is completely wrapped up in their professional role. And what we're talking about today is identity. I want you to have such a strong sense of self that no job title can override it, and certainly a loss of any particular job title or role cannot take it away. And to bring that to life, I'm going to talk about key pivotal transitions in my professional career and how that challenged my identity and what I learned in the process as I navigated through those transitions. So when we talk about identity, there's a trap that we all fall into. And the best way to illustrate it is what happens at every networking event, every dinner party, practically every social interaction you have ever been involved in. One of the first questions that you ask, or someone will ask you, is, what do you do? Not who are you, not what matters to you, not what gets you excited, what gets you out of bed in the morning, what are you passionate about? It is, what do you do? And that answer automatically trips off your tongue as an articulation of your professional role. Now, there's nothing wrong with professional pride. There's nothing wrong with being proud of where you are and what you do. But your role, your professional role and your identity cannot become the same thing. That's the dangerous thing that we're trying to avoid. Because when that happens, every challenge to your performance, every criticism of your leadership doesn't land as useful feedback. It feels like it becomes a personal attack because this is who I am. This is my identity. So when you navigate through periods of uncertainty in your professional role, it creates uncertainty for you personally. Every transition you go through, be it a promotion, a restructure, a redundancy, as we're seeing all too frequently in industry currently, becomes not a career transition, becomes a crisis of identity. And the higher you climb, the more senior your role becomes, the more challenging those challenges to our identity become. Now, I've seen this pattern repeat so often. I've been there myself. And it's important to try and separate our role from our identity. And as you'll have got to know, for any of you that have listened to previous episodes of the podcast, I pride myself on authenticity. So it stands to reason that the best way for me to bring this to life is to talk a little bit about my own personal journey and how my identity was challenged through those chapters of my career. So let me step into that first transition. Growing up, I was passionate about all sports, golf and rugby in particular. I just loved to watch the international matches, seeing people stepping out with a white England shirt and the red rose on their chest. It was something that just stirred something inside me. And I had a passion from being a young man that I wanted to represent my country. Professional rugby union didn't exist when I was younger, but that identity of being able to say you're an international rugby player and to experience that thrill was something that really motivated me to work hard, to train hard, to try and improve as a player. And I had a whole raft of setbacks through the classic junior age grades of rugby. I didn't get into the international teams at schoolboy level. I didn't make that step into that area that would allow me to facilitate that dream. And eventually I did. Eventually I was lucky enough to be picked for England under-21s and to pull on that England shirt for the first time, to wear that red rose and to represent my country and play in World Cups and Six Nations. And it was the fulfillment of a dream, and it meant the world to me. And around that time, rugby union turned professional. It became a career, it became something you could do for a job. And again, I was fortunate enough to be picked up and given a contract with Newcastle and to step into that world. And it was a star-studded squad of wonderful international players, world-class players, and it was an absolute dream come true to be in that environment. My career then took me to playing in France, and my identity was I am James Rule, the professional rugby player. And that felt good. That was years and years of work to get to that point. But, and here's the big but, there was a niggling doubt inside me. I knew I wasn't quite good enough to sustain top flight professional rugby for a long career. Yes, I could sit on the substitutes bench and I could make cameo appearances for 10 or 15 minutes, but I knew in my heart of hearts I probably wasn't good enough to earn a good living and play regularly in the top flight. Now, why do I use that example? It's not to brag or say, oh, look at me, I did this, I played for my... No, it's about identifying that feedback from our gut and doing something about it. I could have just put my head down and said, no, I am a professional rugby player. This is my identity. This is what I will do, and I will continue to do this throughout my whole 20s. But I didn't. I took the really difficult decision to say, do you know, it would make more sense for me to step down from the very top league, the Premiership, into the league below, to explore a semi-professional contract that required me to train on an evening, still play at a high standard on a weekend, but free up my week to explore professional roles and opportunities, to use my intellect, my desire to step into business and work in the best of both worlds. I can still enjoy my rugby. I can still earn a wage for doing that. I can still play at a high standard, but I can also develop my professional career. Now, that's the logical route. Why wouldn't you do it, I hear you say? Because identity gets in the way. It doesn't sound as impactful as a young man in your mid-20s to say, I am a semi-professional rugby player and a professional executive. It just doesn't have the pizzazz, the sexiness, if you will. And so looking back with experience and with the benefit of the hindsight, I made exactly the right call. But I wanted to use this chapter as an illustration of it didn't feel the right call at the time. It felt like an admission of failure, an admission of weakness. I wanted to be a professional rugby player. I'm not good enough. I haven't made it. Why haven't I made it? Did I not work hard enough? What's wrong with me? All those questions were going through my mind. The second key transition saw me stepping into the commercial space of sports administration. I worked within a fabulous consultancy. I moved into the commercial directorship role at a professional rugby club, and I ultimately navigated my way into becoming a chief executive in my late 20s. I then went on to enjoy 2 different tenures at 2 separate clubs for over a decade in that senior leadership position. And those experiences were invaluable. So many highs, so many wonderful experiences, lessons learned, and of course, as with all senior leadership, so many challenges, some truly harrowing experiences as well. All of this I learned from, all of this I developed from. But my identity had shifted from James, the professional rugby player, to James, the chief executive. There was a gravitas to that, a sense of pride. However, I was also cognizant of the fact that those roles were taking a huge amount out of me. The requirement to work in elite professional sport in that sort of senior leadership role was a 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year commitment. The hours were unrelenting, the pressure was unrelenting, the stakeholder expectation was extreme, and the disruption that you faced in terms of injuries to your personnel and what that did to your health and well-being were undeniable. It's a very unique sport. You build a roster and then you step into the environment of competition and you can lose players, multiple players in an 80-minute fixture. And then your ability to perform at the highest level is compromised. I talk about this a lot when I'm working with leadership teams. Disruption is a fact of life, but disruption in certain sectors is far higher than in others. Whatever your role, whether you're in education, health, law, imagine your workforce, your team, and now just start to take out people for 6 months, a year even, full pay, but they can't work. The impact on performance is enormous. So, another transition for me was feeling that this was the right time for me to look at something different. I had become a husband, I had become a father, working with so much weekend commitment at such an intensity was starting to feel like it wasn't aligned with my values. It wasn't going to give me the highest level of fulfillment. There were warning signs, as I've talked about in other episodes. I collapsed with pneumonia. I was physically pushing myself, but did I listen to that gut feel immediately? Absolutely not. Why? Well, this is who I am. This is what I do. The fear of the unknown. I had an inclination. I wanted to build my own business, but I didn't have the courage to step into that immediately. Despite these warning shots, despite collapsing with pneumonia, despite missing certain key events with my children as a consequence of the commitments that my CEO role was demanding, I wasn't quite able to make that transition as seamlessly as I should have done because of the challenge of wrestling with my own ego and my own sense of identity. And the third key transition was stepping out of that world of being a CEO, a senior leader in the sports sector, and founding The Lonely Leader, a complete pivot into a space that was unfamiliar and uncomfortable, building my own business, stepping into that world of supporting the growth and development of leaders and bringing forth my lived life experience. It couldn't have been a more challenging start because I launched the business just prior to COVID and the implications that had, locking down and shutting down businesses globally. And an interesting reflection point, both at the time at which I stepped out of being a professional rugby player to move into the business of sport, and the time I stepped away from being a CEO within sport and starting my own venture, there wasn't a huge amount of acknowledgement that I was doing the right thing. People would openly say, "Oh, you're going to stop being a professional rugby player. Why would you do that? You're living the dream. Why don't you just keep going for longer? Oh, you're going to stop being a chief executive in sport. Why would you do that? That's like the perfect role." However, people closest to me, my wife, my best friends, my family, they knew what was important to me, the values that were important to me, and how those decisions were very aligned with my desire for fulfillment and my desire to step into a space that was more closely aligned with who I was and what I wanted at that moment in my life. So what's the message there? Well, it's make sure you have support around you, but don't listen to any and every opinion. That can trap you. That can force you into, oh, well, societal pressures say I should do this or I should do that, and therefore I won't make the change. No, you must listen to your gut, and you must be comfortable knowing that you are evolving as a person, and what might have been right recently or a few years ago can change. Classic deconstruction of that for me was, as a young single man, the only focus was becoming the best that I could be as a professional athlete. That was what I was focused on. But as I matured and I evolved and I become more conscious of the other opportunities, I realized I perhaps could perform at a higher level in the business of sport than I could on the field of sport. Equally, as a young single man stepping into the CEO world, working 7 days a week, working 15-hour days was absolutely fine to me. There was nothing else I was more passionate or cared more about. When I became a husband and a father, a decade plus down the line, it became much more about work-life integration and how I could be the best husband, the best father, and the best coach and mentor. There was a reallocation, if you will, a rebalancing of what was important to me. So it's not that you are flipping and flopping, it's that you're listening to your gut and you're cognizant of the fact that you evolve as a person, what's important to you evolves, and your identity is fluid. You are not locked in to one role and one identity that is rigid. This is why it's important to separate yourself from your role. Your roles are like chapters. There will be different chapters of your life, but your role and who you are is a central theme that transcends all of that, that goes through your professional role and across your personal life as well. Now, this is a really complex topic, and I hope my examples give you food for thought. Wherever you are on your leadership journey right now, you might be in a role that you love, you might be in a role that you're questioning, you might be preparing to leave a role, or you might be just about to start a new role. The identity question is constantly live. It's always there, and I want it front and center in your mind. And I want to leave you with four key reflections, four markers, four challenges, you could say. It's not a checklist, but it's something that I want you to reflect on because I think it will help you understand whether you truly do have separation between your identity and your role. So, the first one to think about is how does criticism land with you? When someone challenges your decision, your strategy, your leadership, if you will, how does it feel? Naturally, there's always a bit of a sting, and that's normal. But does it really rock you? Does it destabilize you? Do you keep playing it over and over in your head? Does it make you question not just the decision, but start to question your worth as a person? If criticism is really cutting you deeply like that, it's worth asking why. And the answer is usually that too much of your self worth is wrapped up and housed in external opinion of your professional performance. That's a little bit of a warning sign. I've been there. When it's all consuming, you are your role and your role is you. If somebody then criticizes an aspect of your role, well, that's a personal attack, isn't it? The second area of focus is how do you relate to the idea of transition? I've talked about my journey of transition and how there was a bubbling gut feel sitting within me as these pivotal moments approached. So, how does the thought of your role changing, of stepping into something different, or your title shifting feel to you? Does it feel uncomfortable? Or does it feel almost catastrophic, like something fundamental about who you are would be lost? Now, if it's the latter, that's the identity fusion that we've been talking about. And it's worth naming it. I like that concept of identity fusion. Everything's just fused together, there's no separation. I think it's unhealthy if we cannot remain open minded about the potential of transition and how our career can evolve. And when we have that resistance, for me, that's another red flag that there's some work to be done here. Based on my experience and the mentoring and coaching experiences, the next thing I'm going to position to you now might feel a little bit uncomfortable. But what is the quality of your relationships outside of your role? I don't mean how many friends do you have? It's not a checklist, a tick box, but I mean, who are the people that genuinely know you as a person rather than a position? If you were to step out of your professional role, who are the ones that would still want to spend time with you and that you would still want to spend time with them? Who care about you as a human being rather than you, the X title, the X role? And that's often a really difficult thing to reflect on. And if you struggle to name those people readily, that's important information. I've been there. Your whole social circle starts to disappear, and the only people you're interacting with are the people that you work with because that's all you do. There's no balance outside of that. So I think that's a really healthy question. Who would you still want to spend time with, and who would still want to spend time with you if your professional role was to change? And my last reflection point ties right back into the title of this episode and the opening few sentences. Who are you when you're not at work? Not just your hobbies or what you do when you're not at work, but your values. What do you stand for? What matters to you when the professional performance metrics are stripped away? If you can answer that question easily, you're far more grounded than you realize, and you're probably in a pretty good space. But if you struggle with that, as I said at the start of the episode, that is valuable intelligence that there is work to be done. Please don't rush past that and reflect on how you might start to be able to work through this. As I always say, I hope this episode has prompted some reflection. I like the notion that our titles, our professional titles, our roles are chapters in our book of life. They're not the whole story, they're a chapter. And however significant, however senior the role you're in right now, that doesn't mean that you are your role and your role is you. I hope that lesson has been truly embedded as we've walked through this episode, because The leaders that I've seen that are most effective at navigating pressure, that can make the best decisions under pressure, they're really the ones who care most about their job title. They're the ones who are most secure and who have done the work in genuinely understanding who they are, what they stand for. That gives them a real security. Now, it's not about losing your ambition. It's about building an identity that runs deeper than your role, values that you can name, that question I've posed to you, you can answer easily, relationships that exist outside of the office that you nurture and that enrich your life and your mindset, and you do the same for them. A definition of success that's genuinely yours, not borrowed from your organization, not what sounds impressive at a dinner party, an ability to have real clarity about who am I, what do I stand for, what does success look like for me, what is my mission, and how is this role helping me move forward on that mission. Now, those questions at first sounding may seem overwhelming. Don't let it be. This is the work I do with leaders on a daily basis. So if this has piqued your interest, if you can identify from what we've talked about today that you have lost yourself in your role, that your professional role is your identity and your identity is your role, then don't panic with that. That is a common situation. It's a situation I have encountered. I've talked about it as a professional player, as a CEO. It is the norm, and there is a way through that. So if you would like support, one very easy step would be to sign up to our email newsletter, the Leadership Accelerator. The links are in the show notes, and that is a weekly touch point, giving you reflections and helping you move forward to grow and to develop. And there is a natural dotted line into helping you truly identify who you are and what you stand for. And if you want to go a step beyond that and you want to reach out and have an insight call with me, then get in touch via the contact details within the show notes. You can have a no obligation, very relaxed insight call with me, and I can give you a little bit of perspective beyond what I've talked about today into how I may be able to help you unpack this, because we do need to separate it. You do not want to be losing your professional ambition, as I keep stressing. You do not want to lose your professional pride in what you do, but you do need to protect your well-being, your mental health, by ensuring that your role is just a chapter in your life journey. It is not your entire identity. So if you want to explore that more deeply, please do get in touch. And as ever, I want to close by wishing you the very best of luck on your continued journey of growth and development. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.